Good evening. Whoa. And welcome to the final debate of the 2011 municipal election season, brought to you by the Kokomo Tribune and the Kokomo Perspective. Tonight we will feature the candidates running for mayor: incumbent Democrat Greg Goodnight, challenger Republican Scott Kern. I'm Don Wilson, publisher of The Perspective, and I will be the moderator for tonight's event. The debate is scheduled to last no more than 90 minutes and may not last that long, and is being live streamed on the Kokomo Perspective website, kokomoperspective.com. The event is also being filmed for broadcast on KGov. I'd like to thank Kokomo Center Middle Schools for the use of their facility here at Central Middle School in downtown Kokomo. We'd also like to thank the Political Science Club from Indiana University, Kokomo, for providing some questions for tonight's municipal debates. The format for tonight's debate is as follows. Each candidate will be given 2 minutes for an opening statement. We will then begin the questions, with each candidate being given the opportunity to respond first to a question on a rotating basis. Each candidate will have 1 minute to respond. We would like to remind the candidates that they do not ask questions of one another as part of their responses to a question. The format is tonight's debate is not a Lincoln Douglas debate. We also request the audience to hold their reactions to the statements made by the candidates, as we do have many questions we would like to present and a limited time frame in which to ask them. All questions for tonight's debate was developed by the editorial staffs of the Kokomo Tribune and the Kokomo Perspective, and were delivered to me less than an hour ago. However, should I feel it necessary, I may ask candidates to expand on their responses to these questions, and I may ask follow-up questions based on their statement. And if everyone has a cell phone or whatever, would you please turn them to either vibrate or turn them off? All right, let's begin, I believe, with the flip of the coin. Mayor Goodnight's going first.
Good evening. Thank you to the media outlets and other groups that made tonight's event possible. I also want to thank everyone who took the time to attend tonight in person. I'm Greg Goodnight, Mayor of Kokomo, and I'm here tonight asking for your support and your vote. 4 years ago, you gave me the privilege of representing you as the mayor of our great city. Our goal was to improve our community and make decisions based on what is best for the entire city, not certain individuals or certain groups. We have done just that. During the past few years, Kokomo was hit hard, if not harder, than any city in the Midwest. Our elected officials, business leaders, community advocates, and volunteers fought continuously for our city. Now we are heading in the right direction, and people are taking notice. Just 2 weeks ago, the Indiana State Chamber of Commerce, an organization made up of almost 5,000 businesses across the state, recognized Kokomo as its 2011 Community of the Year. The State Chamber Award is proof that Kokomo is respected by business leaders throughout our state. This is a true community award. Every one of our citizens, young and old, should be proud. We are on the right track. There's no better testament to that fact than to hear each and every council candidate, both Republican and Democrat, make that declaration during their respective debates. In 4 years, Kokomo has received more awards and recognition than ever before. Kokomo's financial condition is at its strongest in a decade, with a AA+ bond rating, and in 2010, Kokomo led every city in the entire state, including Indianapolis and Fort Wayne, in private dollar investment. We as a community need to keep this going. We need to stay on track and continue to move Kokomo forward. With your help and support, we will. Thank you.
Scott Kern.
Good evening. I'd also like to thank everybody for attending today and for both media outlets for performing this debate for everyone. I'd like to clear up a couple things early on from the previous debate. I'd like to talk a little bit about some of the misconceptions, some of the misrepresentation as far as what was, I guess, conveyed through this last debate. First of all, I never said anything about hiring additional firefighters. I basically said we'll have to look at the study. We'll look at the annexation study and make that determination at a later date. Never said anything about hiring the police department. Thought it was an area that was, for the lack of a better term, too many chiefs and not enough Indians. I think everybody heard that the last time. We also talked about how I was going to pay for certain things, as far as the sidewalks on Jefferson and some of the things that we had mentioned early on in the last debate. I might start by saying that maybe we can take some of the money from some of the businesses around Kokomo who owe money to the city of Kokomo, and not give them some of these contracts. You give them some of these contracts, yet they owe money to the city of Kokomo. That's all public knowledge. You can look on the your tax forms and find out exactly who owes the city of Kokomo money, and you can basically take some of that money away, and that'll create some of the revenue necessary to do some of these projects. We also talked about the legal fees that the county is seeking from the city. I guess there's a little bit of debate as to whether or not that's something the city ought to do. I personally last week or 3 weeks ago said that was something that I'd be an advocate for, based upon the fact that I think they were okay with just accepting the interest. The city of Kokomo received $2.4 million from their efforts, and I think that we should continue to look at trying to foster a good relationship with the county. Thanks again for attending.
Mayor Goodnight, how will you handle the new US 31 Expressway to benefit the city of Kokomo economically?
That's going to be one of the biggest challenges facing this community in the next decade, is to not only what we do with the new 31, but what we do with the existing 31, and how we maintain it as a viable corridor for business and for small businesses and retail business. Right now, we're doing a study through the Planning Commission to decide what zoning parcels, which parcels and how they'll be zoned, and what will be the best interest in the long term of the community. Ultimately, you determine how this new corridor is developed by two things: by sewers and providing sewers, and by zoning. And so, just by the fact that we're going through this now, will give us a good indication on what the future use should be.
Thank you. Mr. Kern?
Could you repeat the question, please?
How will you handle the new US 31 Expressway to benefit the city of Kokomo economically?
Well, the fact that I don't have a lot of that information at my fingertips, I'd probably be a little premature to answer that question. But I would hope that our infrastructure is in place to where we would be able to allow the new US 31 corridor to make access to every part of the city. Also, as far as I agree that we need to pay very close attention to what happens to the current US 31 bypass, and make sure that the zoning is done in a fashion to where it's most beneficial to the city of Kokomo and doesn't disrupt any future plans for the city of Kokomo. I think that the best way we can do it is to make sure that when that US 31 corridor comes in, we make sure that the Planning Commission has all their ducks in a row, and make sure that they do everything possible to make it work for all of us.
Mr. Kern, candidates love to talk about saving money, streamlining local government, finding efficiencies, and make a number of general statements about how much better off we will be if they are elected. What efficiencies, streamlining, or savings will you produce in the next 4 years?
Well, basically, we're looking at. I think there's a lot of area within city government that needs serious adjustment. I feel personally that we're top heavy in a lot of our departments, and I know that's not going to make a lot of departments very happy, but I feel that that's an area that we can look at as an area that we can save a lot of money. That's not politically correct a lot of times to say that, because the areas within some of these departments, they don't like to be referred to as top heavy. And I feel that we can make those adjustments within City Hall, and that's just one of the avenues we can go. And hopefully we'll have an opportunity to do that.
Just replacing leadership and putting them on the street or in the firehouse or whatever is not going to save a whole lot of money, is it?
No, I mean, as far as the staff reduction, whether if it's a staff reduction or whether it's as far as how you're going to proportion your staffing. And I personally think the staffing is not proportioned to the best benefit of the city of Kokomo.
Can you give an example?
Not at this time.
Okay. Mayor Goodnight.
Well, I feel like we've done a lot of streamlining. When I took over, we had 521 full-time city employees in the city of Kokomo, December 2007. And right now we're running the city with, I believe, somewhere around 454. and some of those are paid, such as through the fire department, through grant monies. I just want to go back to the 31 corridor question. You know, Scott continues to say he has no access to this information. These are public meetings, and he's welcome to attend. He could have somebody from his staff attend. He could attend these meetings himself and gather the information. There have been numerous studies on US 31 and through the Plan Commission. They've had meetings, community meetings out at IUK. And the fact that he chose not to attend, I don't think should be a pass for not having the information.
Scott, would you like to respond? Not attending meetings?
Yeah, I've attended probably as many meetings as my time would allow me to attend, and also run for office and conduct my business outside of running for office.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Goodnight, much has been said about the hanging flower baskets, bump outs, crosswalks, and the catch basins along Main and Union Streets. What impact do you feel these items have had on the city? And if elected, what are your intentions regarding these items in the future?
Well, let's address them separately. Hanging baskets, I think total cost to provide hanging baskets is somewhere around $30,000 a year. The bump out flower arrangements are all paid through private donations. In fact, if you look very closely at each intersection, you'll see the sponsor that provides the cost to pay for those. The rain gardens along Main and Union, it's an environmentally friendly way to reduce runoff, and it also cleans up our streets. The plants that are in there, they use these in other cities. Indianapolis is putting them in all over the city. Those plants allow an environmentally friendly way to clean up toxins, whether it be brake fluids, gasolines, antifreeze, anything that road runoff. And so these type of investments, obviously, it also mitigates flooding in that this provides a place to control the water. So
thanks, Greg.
Sorry.
Scott.
Well, as far as the cost for the hanging baskets, you know, it's all part of beautification. I think we all look at it, and I don't think anybody would, I guess, counter the thought that they don't look nice for the city of Kokomo. I understand, and as far as the costs are concerned, I know a lot of volunteer work goes into providing that. But the fact of the matter is, you know, I think we get lost on the fact that this beautification is not doing a whole lot for our jobs. It's not doing a whole lot for our economic opportunity, and that's the problem that we're running into when we talk to the community as a whole. And as far as the rain gardens, that's news to me. And I'm not versed in that area as regards to whether or not those rain gardens have been proven to be flood resistant and everything else. I'd have to look at the studies that shows those.
Thank you. Question for Mr. Did you have a response? A rebuttal? I'm sorry. Question for Mr. Kern only. You have repeatedly criticized Goodnight for increased spending. Since the spending didn't take place in the general fund, which is fueled by the local tax dollars, you must be referring to federal grants and stimulus money received in 2009-2010. That money has underwritten the cost of a public transportation system, neighborhood revitalization, and the restoration of several firefighters to the Kokomo Fire Department. How would you have spent the money, or would you have told the government no thanks?
Well, that's where it comes down to prioritizing. You know, some of the money that's come in here, we talk about spending. The spending basically on, 2010 disbursements, $84,133,000, revenue, $83,822,000. So those are in excess of any general fund items. And as far as I'm concerned, when you look at the spending, you look at the net spending in regards to what you have to show for it. I think that's the problem that a lot of the people are concerned with. They're wanting to know exactly how much money being spent. These numbers don't appear in the press. These numbers don't appear in any press releases from City Hall. These are the actual numbers. All you have to do, it takes a little bit of deciphering to look through the State Board of Accounts or the Indiana Department of Local Government Finance. It takes a little bit of time to look through there and decipher those numbers. But those are the actual numbers, but they're not going to be portrayed tonight or in the paper. This is the only way it's going to get out there.
Thank you. But Mr. Kern, this is not money that was taxed. This is money that came from the federal government. would you not have used that money, or would you used it differently?
I think you'd have to look at it from a priority based. You'd have to look at it from the standpoint of how it comes into you and what the citizens' best needs, not what my best needs are to possibly get me reelected. I mean, I view it from that standpoint, and I base a lot of these responses on what the people are saying. This is what we've dealt with for quite some time, almost 8 months now, and a lot of people are confused by the tactics of spending the money.
But you do agree that it was the government money.
Well, I
that
mean,
was the additional
federal money,
spending.
local money, it's all tax money. It's just a diluted portion that comes back to the city of Kokomo.
Okay.
So,
thank you. Mayor Goodnight, do you have any response to that?
Yeah, well, a few things. A lot of times we take money in from other government units, and we are just a facilitator, and Scott may not understand how the process works. For example, weights and measures. This is a joint program with the county. The county gives us money. We write the checks, provide benefits to the employees in weights and measures, and then it goes out. That's not money that the city council appropriates. That's not money that we budget. But we're the facilitator for those things. That's the same way with things like the Neighborhood Stabilization Program. That's a $2 million federal grant that we oversee, and we have to facilitate it. But in no way or means do we determine how it's spent. The federal government has strict guidelines on how those things are spent.
Thank you. Mayor Goodnight, for you, K-Fuel was heralded as a major advance toward making Kokomo a green or environmentally responsible community. The program is no longer in existence. Can you explain what happened to the program?
Yeah. And K-Fuel was a way to take vegetable oil and convert it into either a diesel use or a blended use for diesel vehicles. We used it. I think we went maybe 9 months to a year using the K-Fuel. We had some problems with a few problems with some of it with the restaurants. A chemical they were using to extend the life of their vegetable oil caused problems. I don't think there was a lot of support within some of the maybe some of the people that were utilizing it. A lot of times. City employees, and Scott is very familiar with this, will make distractions and cause problems where maybe there aren't quite as many, or try to create a problem where there's a large problem where there's a small problem. And so we had to discontinue it. Our total cost and investment was about $35,000, and when we were done, we probably got 2/3 of that back.
Thank you. But this was never going to work, though, because of the mixture of whatever the businesses put in or whatever.
It does work. I mean, it
does
can
work.
There are people that use it. Yeah, there are people that use it today.
Thank you.
The possibility exists.
Mr. Kern.
well, it's interesting that the restaurants were thrown under the bus there, but as far as I'm concerned, this was putting people in places that they really don't have any business in. You tell somebody that's assisting on your campaign to go make K-Fuel work. That's like telling me to go make K-Fuel work. It's not going to work. And the fact of the matter is, that you sit up here and you tell people that some of the city employees had a role in making it fail. That's somewhat comical. I hope everybody understands that no city employee that I know of had any role in trying to make it fail. This is something that's good for the city of Kokomo. I still think it's something that could work, but for whatever reason it did not work. And I think it's more of a mismanagement flaw. And I hate to see other people thrown under the bus for that.
Mr. Goodnight, do you have any specifics about city employees trying to make this fail?
Well, I just experienced it with some of with Scott during the previous administration when I was on the council, and he explained to me why plants would not grow on Deffenbaugh Street and in front of Indiana University Kokomo when Mayor McKillop put the plantings in there, and explained to me that snow plows would kill all those. With the salt would kill all those things, and he made those personal comments to me. I think it's funny, though, he talks about me throwing people under the bus, and then he directs an attack at the wastewater treatment employees who were running the program. I didn't go out there and run K-Fuel. I didn't run the equipment or collect the vegetable oil, but he likes to talk about throwing people under the bus, and then he just throws the management of the wastewater treatment plant under the bus. So.
Go ahead.
That would be David Galvin. All the rest of the people that had anything to do with it, I'm not throwing you under the bus at all. That would be David Galvin. He was in charge of it. It was Paul Munoz and David Galvin. They both moved on because they both realized that they were put in a position they had no knowledge of. So just everyone out here that works for the wastewater utility, I'm not throwing you under the bus whatsoever. So just so you know that.
Mr. Goodnight.
Yeah. Well, this is what I've dealt with for the last 4 years and really even longer with Scott Kern. He makes these allegations. David Galvin didn't leave Scott, and you know that. It has nothing to do with K-Fuel while David Galvin left. Paul Munoz is working for the town of Cicero. In fact, he was up in city council chambers just a couple of weeks ago bringing a group from Cicero, including State Representative Eric Turner, on a bus tour to look at what we've accomplished downtown. So when he makes these statements that people quit because of K-Fuel or because of discontent, it's more of a distraction on what we need to be focusing on in this city.
Thank you. Mr. Kern, your campaign literature suggests that funding for the Greater Kokomo Economic Development Alliance should cease. If this happens, which functions of the alliance will you require the city's Department of Development to assume in its absence? You have suggested a duplication of services exists between the department and the alliance. Could you detail these redundancies and explain how you will eliminate them?
Well, we've discussed about going in and doing a quick analogy of not only whatever the functions that Jacada provides, as well as the functions that our economic development group in the city of Kokomo, what they do. And like I said, I don't know what those functions are. I'm not in economic development in the city of Kokomo, and I don't work for Jacada. But I think there are reasons and concerns for the city of Kokomo when they see the results. They see the results of the amount of money spent on economic development within the city of Kokomo and the results. Just take a look around and look at your net jobs, and I think we can view it from that standpoint. That's what it's about. It's about jobs and it's about economic opportunity. And for whatever reason, we're not getting the job done. So I think it takes a careful evaluation as to what the problems are, and then you make the adjustment to what those problems are, just like any organization.
Would you quit funding Jacada?
Well, I think a lot of that has to do with what was read in the paper. I'm assuming that it was true as far as I think a year-end balance of $1.59 million. I think that just kind of tells people, why do you continue to fund it if they have that much money? And it just raises the eyebrows of the citizens out there.
In your literature, you said you will not rely upon and fund organizations with your tax dollar to fulfill the city's economic development functions that you expect from any city administration.
Right.
And so does that indicate that you wouldn't fund it?
It just indicates the fact that I think the mayor and the mayor's office and the city administration, regardless of who that is, should take sole responsibility for economic development. And they should take the praise and they should take the criticism.
Okay. Mayor Goodnight, how will you deal with Jacada if reelected?
Well, first of all, we do have a problem here that Scott does not understand how the finances work, whether it's accounting or even accounting for Jacada. When he looks at their cash balance of 1.5%, many of those funds, Scott, are restricted funds. They're restricted. You can only use them. For example, it's the state incubator that was originally housed through the Kokomo-Howard County Economic Development Corporation. A lot of that funding comes in, and it is restricted funding that has to be used to maintain that building, for programs within that building, small business development, some of those different items. So when you look at a $1.5 million cash balance, it's not just that they're sitting on a pile of cash. A lot of those things are, for example, the UEA money is considered part of that, and I think there's over $200,000 there. So to answer your question, yes, I think Jacada is very important to this community. In fact, we are following the state's lead set by his party's governor, Mitch Daniels, who formed a public-private partnership with the Indiana Economic Development Corporation.
Thank you. Mr. Goodnight, education was a major portion of your campaign last time. Are you happy with the results since you've been in office, and what do you continue to do about education in the city of Kokomo?
Yeah, I think I'm involved in Partners in Education each month with the 5 school superintendents and representatives from Purdue University and Indiana University Kokomo. You talked about the Economic Development Board, Jacada. Chancellor Steve Daly from Ivy Tech and Chancellor Michael Harris both serve on that board. We've, in fact, a program we started, One Step Up, back in 2009, enables local businesses and people with reduced incomes to get city grants to help pay for their education through Ivy Tech and IUK, and we've allotted a portion of money to go to those programs to encourage our residents to improve their educational attainment.
Mr. Kern, do you have any response to that?
Yeah, in regards to education, I think we can refer back to Mayor Goodnight's unveils a plan to invest in people. It says, under Goodnight's proposal, the city would provide child care at no or low cost to city residents attending classes. It would also keep the Early Learning Center, Kokomo's daycare center, open in the evening to accommodate those enrolled in night classes. Other planks involved provide a low or no cost transportation to students, offering financial incentives to those who further their education, building strong community-based partnerships with local schools, university, and educational not-for-profits. The program would not only accommodate those seeking an education, but would also actively encourage people to do so. Goodnight said, whether it means finishing a college degree or obtaining a GED, he said it's aimed at breaking the cycle of an uneducated workforce. I think the problem we have here is that, this was a platform 4 years ago. And that platform ended with the daycare center being shut down. And any opportunity for anybody to get any nighttime education for the city of Kokomo ended there. And that was unfortunate. And
Mr. Kern, would you reopen the daycare center? And what plans would you have if elected for education, or would you have any?
Well, we'd have to do an evaluation and look at that. As far as opening at its current site, probably not, because Novia is one of the things that I think needs to continue. But we would have to look at assess the needs for early childhood development as far as anything like that. We would have to look at that, and those are decisions that I can't make, obviously, from sitting here in this position.
What goals would you have for education of the young for Kokomo?
Well, we would have to evaluate the needs and the necessity, and we'd have to evaluate the as far as the future of Kokomo, as far as the citizen output, as far as establishing those needs.
You have no specific ideas?
No.
Okay. Mayor Goodnight, do you have a follow-up?
A couple things, real quick. On every question, Scott's not giving any specifics whatsoever. It's evaluate, it's study. It's just January 1st we're going to do 20 studies and 20 evaluations and not have a plan if we would somehow be elected going into office. And that's, we're in a short time frame here. We're 20 days out from an election. First of all, I appreciate my opponent did mention that I did make one of my promises was committed a low-cost transportation for people to use public education, and that was the trolley system that we were able to put in. The number one user is Ivy Tech Community College, so I appreciate him pointing that out. I think it's important, though. Every time you ask him, would you reopen the Early Learning Center, we don't get a straight answer. He campaigns on transparency. Every piece of literature that I've seen that he has says transparency, yet there's no transparency. There's no real answers. There's politics, and then there's leadership, and I'm seeing a lot of politics. With that, the Early Learning Center, if there was a way to keep it open, we would have. Unfortunately, we didn't see the Great Recession coming any more than the national economists did 3-4 years ago.
Scott, do you have any response to that?
Yeah, as far as evaluating, I think there are mayors come and go, and they're going to continue to come and go. And for everyone to come in here and think that they're a mayor that has all the answers, they're sadly mistaken. They come in here and they make the promises. You stand on the steps at the Early Learning Center and make a pledge that you're going to keep it open, and then you go back on your word. So that's the reason why we're going to do an evaluation, because the last thing I want to do is come up here and make somebody any promises. I'm going to make you a promise that, yeah, we're going to open a daycare center. Next thing you know, we're lying to the public once again by telling them that you're going back on your word, and that's not what we're going to do. We are going to evaluate, and it's not like we're going to evaluate November 9th. That's when the evaluation starts, and hopefully we get that opportunity.
At this point in time, do you have any specific plans that you've already developed that you will institute day one in office?
As far as the daycare?
As far as anything?
As far as anything, no, not at this time. other than looking at the overall picture of our economy, looking at the overall picture of every single department, and making a determination as if everyone is as efficient as necessary. And that's up for that's up for debate. A lot of people might think that it's running as efficient as possible right now. I think there's a lot of people that would disagree with that.
Do you have examples?
No, I'd be a little reserved to throw more people under the bus.
Are you running efficient, Mayor Goodnight?
Absolutely, we are. I think there's always room for improvement, and I think any individual, any business, any family, any unit of government, whether it be a county, city, or school corporation, can't remain stagnant. We need to continue to evaluate and reevaluate ourselves, but I think we've made great strides. I'll give you a couple of examples. Right now, in the last week or two, I've read articles about the cities of similar size here in Indiana, Columbus, Indiana. They are deficit spending. Their budget that they put forth for 2012 doesn't pay for itself. They'll have to take out of their cash reserves. Greenwood's been doing this for a few years, and in their mayoral debate in Johnson County, the question came up that they're going to have to make some very difficult decisions in the next few years. We're not doing that. I'm not going to take full credit for it. I've got a lot of good department heads, a lot of good city employees, and we have a very good city council. And they understand. Some people don't. But they understand the financial situation we faced in the last few years, and they've made the adjustments.
Mr. Kern, hypothetical or somewhat hypothetical is bound to come up. The city needs an engineering service for a major construction project. 3 companies respond to a request for proposal. Company A contributed to your campaign and has the lowest proposal. Company B contributed to your campaign and is a local company but has the highest proposal. Company C did not contribute to your campaign and is not local, but pledges to use local talent to provide the services. All 3 are reputable firms and are within the $5,000 of each other in cost. Which do you choose?
Yeah, you're right. It's a hypothetical question, and we would have to look at that. But as far as I'm concerned, you'd have to make sure that whatever you used provides more local contractors than if you have the option. You want more local contractors utilized at all cost.
So you would lean towards the company that's going to put the local people to work.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Mayor Goodnight, how would you respond to that question?
Give me just the choices again on the 3.
Okay. They're all good companies. Company A Company A contributed to your campaign and has the lowest proposal. Company B contributed to your campaign and is a local company but has the highest proposal. Company C did not contribute to your campaign and is not local but pledges to use local talent to provide the services. All 3 are qualified firms and within the $5,000 of each other in cost.
Okay. Well, there's a few things. First of all, we did pass through the City Council, and I signed it, a responsible bidder ordinance, which allows local companies, when they're bidding, to get up to a 5% discount by virtue of being local, and it's dependent on the size of the contract, and it's in varying degrees. Looking at those, we have to make these decisions all the time. It's usually the lowest competent bidder is who we go with. Now, sometimes I will remind our audience that an out-of-town bidder can use local labor. Most times under the local union labor agreements, whether it be with the carpenters, sheet metal workers, or even plumbers, pipe fitters, and electricians, they, even though it's an out-of-town company or contractor that comes in, they will utilize local labor. So not knowing if they're union or not and if they're signatory to any of those bargaining units makes it a little more difficult. But normally we go with the lowest responsible bidder.
Okay. Scott, do you have any more on that? Mr. Goodnight, your campaign slogan is you've been tested and trusted. You're tested and trusted. How are you tested and why are you trusted?
Okay. Well, first of all, we were tested during the most difficult period of financial times in our country's, really in the history since the Great Depression. This has been tough on all of us. It's been tough on small businesses, large businesses, corporations, individual families, as well as all units of local government. We made it through this recession in better shape than when we came into it. We have a higher bond rating. Our city has now zero debt. We have no general fund obligations. We have no edit obligations. We are in a position to for economic growth. We have positioned ourselves very well. These were very trying times. 4 of our largest employers have went through bankruptcy in the last 5 years: General Motors, Delphi, Chrysler, and Haynes. And if somebody can guide us through those difficult times, that's the tested part. The trusted part is we made it out of this. We're through the worst part. We're now, last year we led, as I said in my opening statement, we led the entire state in investment, private dollar investment.
Thank you. Scott, do you have anything to add to trusted and trusted?
Well, I mean, given the economic climate over the last 4 years, I think I can definitely agree with the first half of that. I'm not going to agree with the second half because, what we're dealing with is on a day in and day out basis is some of the stuff you have access to in the paper and everything else. You see some of the stats, and you cut employment, or you cut city employees by 15%, you cut it by 10%, 12%, depending on what piece of literature you look at. So that those are kind of things that raise some eyebrows with a lot of people out there. They wonder, which one is it? Is it 15, 12, or 10? And that's some if the literature's correct, or if the Tribune's incorrect, or whatever piece of advertising or media source that we're reading this from. So like I said, I'll agree with the tested part.
Thank you. Mr. Kern, please explain your ethics and integrity which you pledged to bring to the city of Kokomo.
Well, basically, it is about honesty. It's about it's treating people with respect and expecting that respect to be brought right back to you. And that's what in my opinion, that's what we've been missing, and what we've discussed over the last almost a year now with citizens, with business owners, with people that sit on boards throughout the city and everything else. And those are the people that bring, it is somewhat refreshing, the fact that it's just not a Scott Kern opinion, although my opponent would like to sit up here and tell everybody that that's just my opinion. It's not just Scott Kern's opinion. There's a lot of people out there that feel that way. And we basically want to lead by example, do things with integrity, do things with honesty, and hold people to a higher level. And lead by example. You do that, and you're going to have the people behind you. Your workforce behind you is going to be more powerful then than it ever has been. So that's the way I look at it.
Scott, I kind of got lost in the thing. What are people agreeing with you with? I got lost there.
What are citizens out there? Yes. That business is being conducted right now with not a lot of integrity and not a lot of honesty, and that's what they feel like they're missing. There's not a whole lot of faith, and maybe we'll have to wait and see. The jury's out on that, and it's going to come in on November 8th. And if people look at it from that vantage point and feel that things are going on as good as that this man portrays them as being, then you know what, they could possibly win this election. On the other hand, if the majority of the people out here that we're talking to feel that some of the things that are going on are not on the up and up, then they're probably going to vote in a different fashion.
What things are not going on, in your belief, are not on the up and up?
Just honesty and integrity about
honesty and integrity about what?
Just press releases. You have a press release and you tell everybody certain things and they don't match up. I've not seen that the city has spent $84 million. I've not seen that in any kind of publication. Yet, because it's probably not really conducive to re-election. Because that's one of the things we talked about. We talked about the amount of spending, the amount of unnecessary spending, prioritizing the stimulus dollars coming in. And those are the things that people are fed up with because they know that kind of money is coming into the community and they just don't see any benefits they don't see the benefits that kind of money should bring to a community. They don't see the jobs, the economic opportunities that should accompany that kind of investment in the city of Kokomo.
Thank you. Mayor Goodnight.
Excuse me. Well, you talked about a lot of things, and hopefully we'll get an equal amount of time here. We continue. I'm not sure Scott still understands the budget when he talks about the $84 million. If you analyze county government in that same way that he is analyzing city government, they would be responsible for $280 million because they facilitate the and the disbursement of the city's funds. They collect them, disperse them to the city, to the school corporations, to the trustees, to the other levels and units of government. They don't have the discretion to spend that money. They just are the group that's facilitating. So when he pulls out numbers like $84 million, that's not something that was appropriated by the city council. It's not a city budget line item. It is something that we facilitate through other units of government. Now, the original question, I think, was
ethics and integrity that Mr. Kern says he will bring to the office.
Yeah. One thing I've got to address this one. It's always these innuendos. It's chasing ghosts. There's always this. This smells. There's never any specifics. I've dealt with this for the last 4 years with Scott. I think it's funny though. He continues to say that we need to treat people with respect and dignity. I want everyone to know this, and in fact, one of my neighbors is here tonight. When I was going through the contentious negotiations with the Kokomo Fire Department, and Scott was chief, Scott would have his firefighters, and some of them were told to do so, and he knows that he told them to do so, would go by my house in the middle of the night, blow the horn, run the sirens, yell out the window, all those things. He encouraged them to do so. And it doesn't bother me. I'm a light sleeper anyway. But he talks about dignity and respect, and at some point, did that show? My question is not necessarily to Scott; it's to the public. Does that show dignity and respect to my neighbors? Some of them elderly, some of them have young children, some of them obviously have to work and get up in the morning. They're paying his salary, his wages, his benefits, his vacation time. And it's awful funny that as soon as Brad Myers came in as interim chief, all the games stopped. So when he talks about treating people with dignity and respect, I hope, because I haven't seen it, I hope that includes the taxpayers.
Scott, did that happen when you were chief?
Absolutely.
And did you order it?
Absolutely. It did happen when I was chief, and absolutely not. We discussed it several times. Matter of fact, he wanted people that honked the horn brought into his office and fired on the spot. And that is the absolute truth of the whole situation. That's the type of, that previous question, we talk about honesty and integrity. The fact that this man can sit here and do this is unbelievable to me. Just flat out, that is what we need to get rid of in this kind of government. I cannot stress it anymore. That I guarantee you it took place. I see some people down here that works for the city that are shaking their heads. I'm sure they've probably been ordered to do so. But the fact of the matter is, this is what happens. This is what happens when you have a guy that comes in and he demands certain things from people. He demands that I want these people brought in. He demanded from me. He told me, this is 100%. He told me, you shut the lights and sirens off. You shut them off at Indiana and turn them back on McCann. That is an absolute quote. And if you want to hear it, I'll play it for you. So that is what I'm talking about. We're talking about integrity and honesty. That is what I'm trying to point out. I'm not going to get caught up in the weeds here, but I'm not going to sit here and listen to these kind of accusations.
Fine. What discipline did you take to the firemen that did that?
No, we offered to take him straight to the mayor's office, and then he called and said, "Don't worry about it." So that's it's the fly off the seat of your pants anger that we dealt with on a day in and day out basis for 17 straight months. We did it for 17 straight months, and that's why we finally just said, you know what, that's it. I've had enough, myself and Randy Wilson included. We just didn't want to deal with it, and he can basically corroborate every story that we've discussed.
Let me make sure I understand. They did it on your watch when you were fire chief. There was no discipline taken? Were you...
No, every one of them claimed, and I didn't buy into their claim. Every one of them claimed that there was a pedestrian walking across the street or a cat driving across the street where they'd honk the horn. The fact of the matter is, they never had the sirens going it's on a signal 10 run. It's when you go lights and sirens to an emergency scene. And those lights and sirens are on. Occasionally, if they honk the horn, the air horn, which is very loud, if they honk the horn, trust me when I tell you this, you can go by Indiana or McCann and those cars pull out in front of you. You better get on the air horn or you're going to lifeline somebody to Indianapolis. And unfortunately, he lives on a very busy street. It's hard for me to say, hey, you're lying and I'm going to give you 5 days off. You can't do that unless there's absolute proof.
Did you go back and look at the record to see if, in fact, they should be in front of the mayor's house at that time?
Yep, and they are signal 10 runs.
Thank you. Mayor Goodnight.
Yeah, I hope, and it's all on tape as well tonight. First, he admits that those actions did take place, and there were some excuses about cats and some of these things. And then he comes out and defends it and says, well, the mayor lives on a busy street. So therefore, he gives two different answers. One, that, yeah, there were some games being played and some harassment being done, not to me, but like I said, I'm a light sleeper, and I explained that to Scott. But when I have elderly neighbors, young children. In fact, one of them's here tonight, and we talked about it over the last week or so, and they all remember this. And when it all ended once a new chief came in, and we haven't had a problem since interim Chief Myers ran the department, and we didn't have a problem after Chief O'Neill. On a bigger note, though, I think just the statements made in the last few minutes show what this election is about. It's not about what's best for the city and moving our city forward and trying to create an environment for business investment and education and prosperity for all citizens of this community. It's about personal grudges and grinding our axes and just getting even. And unfortunately, that's not surprised that's what it's come down to.
Scott.
It's not about that at all, folks. It's not even close to that. I mean, the fact of the matter is that's what took place. It happened on my watch. I was fire chief. That job at that particular point in time was 8 to 4, 8 to 5, and 8 to whatever. I mean, you get called out on any time of night. So, but what everybody has to understand, I'm not on that fire truck. So what takes place on that fire truck, I have to take people for their word. And do I question that during a run? Are they going to, when they get on the air horn before they get to McCann, are they going to hold on to that air horn for about 2 seconds longer? I don't know. They were being treated with disrespect just like everybody else has in this community. And trust me, it's not just the fire department that dealt with that kind of behavior. It's the entire community. We hear it every single day. I'm going to hear it for the next 3 weeks when I go door to door. They've all dealt with it.
How was the fireman treated with disrespect?
Well, you know what? That'd be a good question to ask them, but, the fact of the matter is... No,
I'm asking you. You said they were treated with disrespect.
Absolutely.
How were they treated with disrespect?
Absolutely. Every day. Just tell them they're a burden on the taxpayers. You guys are worthless, lazy. I mean, I'm not going to use the language that was expressed towards them. It wouldn't be an appropriate venue here tonight, but those are the things we had to deal with on a day in and day out basis, every single day. And there are plenty of firefighters at one point in time that will probably attest to the fact that it took place. And whether or not, I doubt very seriously if you're going to have an opportunity to call those, because there are rules within the fire department that says what you can discuss.
Mayor Goodnight.
Yeah, all I'll say is he just confirms what I said earlier. This is about getting back and getting even, and we'll get you, Mayor, for not giving us our raise while everyone else in this community was facing. At one point, we faced 21% unemployment. Scott was out trying to get, not defend cuts, but ask for an actual raise. Anyways, but as I did 3 years ago when Scott was chief, we spent it just seems like continue to spend an unimaginable amount of time on these type of subjects with Scott.
Thank you. Scott, Democrat, Republican. You started out the race as a Democrat, and I think you actually had a fundraiser where you solicited funds as a Democrat, and then you changed to Republican. I believe that's the correct scenario. Is what brought that on? Where you changed from Republican to Democrat?
Or vice versa. You worded it backwards there at the very end, but that's fine. That's okay. Basically, I told this story just a little bit ago at WIOU. I was talking to Peter Heck, and he asked me the same question. When I was 17 years old and started dating my wife, my father-in-law he wasn't my father-in-law yet, but he was soon to be. He told me that I was going to be a Democrat. I'm a 17-year-old kid, and I'm going to date my girlfriend. And if you're going to do that, that's pretty much what I did. Okay, if I was going to date her, I was going to have to be a Democrat. So, as a 17-year-old kid, I basically said I was a Democrat. I don't lead a Democrat I don't lean very far left, and I don't lean very far right. Unfortunately, I've always been an independent thinker. A lot of my value systems right now fall definitely in line with the Republican Party, and it has for quite some time. And honestly, when we had the opportunity to join up with the Republican Party, it was welcomed with open arms on both sides, not only our committee, but their committee as well, because we felt like there was a need. We felt like there was some things missing for the city of Kokomo in regards to our jobs, the lack of jobs, and economic opportunities. We felt like we could help that situation.
As you can tell by the election, there's a lot of straight party voting. Only going to vote for a Democrat no matter what. Only going to vote for Republican no matter what. And that's quite often who shows up at those fundraising events. So you did get funds from people that would only support Democrats. How did you reconcile that?
I got funds from people supporting Scott Kern.
Not the Democrats.
I didn't go into that thing asking for money just because I was.
Please hold your responses down, please. Yeah. As we asked.
I got money from people because they were supporting Scott Kern. They weren't supporting Scott Kern, Democrat, Independent, or Republican. They were supporting me. And you know what? If I decide that I'm Libertarian tomorrow, I got a core group of people that'll follow me there too. Also. But
thank you. Do you have any comments on that, Mayor Goodnight?
Just a couple things. One thing that Scott touched on, I have to agree with, is this job, in effect, is a bipartisan job. I have a good relationship with the governor. In fact, I'm on a panel tomorrow with the Republican mayor of Noblesville, John Ditzler, and the keynote speaker is Lieutenant Governor Becky Skillman, who's also a Republican. So I do have to agree that this job is bipartisan. If he said he was at 17, he was told to do so, and I understand that. I do know that there was a lot of time between 17 and his current age that he, for whatever reason, was loyal to one party. I just say this: what I found ironic about this, people do switch parties from time to time. Scott's not the first one; he's not going to be the last. I've seen it in federal, state, local politics. People do that from time to time. The only thing that I notice is I've never seen anybody do it all in the same election cycle, where they announce in December as a Democrat, they campaign as an independent, collecting signatures in January, and then when filing period comes, they announce as a Republican. So I have seen people switch. People's values change. So,
Scott, any more?
Yeah, I'll touch on that. Well, I'd like to touch a little bit on that, based upon the fact that look at some of the people he's funded. If we want to talk about who's if you want to call it a flopper or anything else like that, look at some of the people in the past that Mayor Goodnight has chosen to fund and currently is funding. So there's no affiliation lines there.
Do you have specifics?
Yeah, I think he did everything he could to get a Democrat beat. As far as Ron Harrell, he did everything he could to get him beat, and he did. Financially speaking.
You talked about funding, I think. Okay.
Yeah,
now
financially
you said he gave
speaking.
money to Ron's opponent.
And current, he did everything he could early on to get Bob Cameron beat, and I don't know what's going on right now. Hopefully, he's not funding other people as far as opposing parties to do that. It's just kind of hypocritical thought to say that I'm the one that's dancing around all the aisles here when he's doing the same thing.
Mayor Goodnight.
Yeah. Well, Scott's incorrect. I've written checks previously to Representative Ron Harrell. I've never given any money to Republican State Rep Mike Karakoff. So he's absolutely wrong when he says that I've funded him. I did support Bob Cameron's opponent in the primary, Carl Miller, but Carl was a Democrat. I didn't flip-flop and go to the other party. I've supported a Democrat that was running against a Democrat. That's a totally different situation. So on both of those instances, he's incorrect.
Mayor Goodnight. The bond on Kokomo Beach will be retired at the end of this year, freeing up approximately $700,000 in economic development income tax money. What are your plans for this money?
My plans are no different than they were 4 years ago. I campaigned on making sure that economic development income tax money was spent specifically on economic development projects. It should not, and under my administration will not, subsidize the general fund. We won't use it for general operating expenses. And right now there are no definitive plans for use of edit funds. So if we, as any opportunities come forward, we will obviously look at that pool for those resources, but there are no immediate plans for any projects in the city of Kokomo. This is our chance to build our chance to build up our cash reserves.
Scott, if elected mayor, what would you do with that approximately $700,000?
Well, we'd have to, obviously, you'd have to look and see what the needs arise during that next cycle here, and also you'd have to look at the necessity. I know edit funds were put into place years ago, and you'd have to determine whether or not that's a viable option to return to the taxpayer or utilize for your own slush fund, so to speak. I mean, it is cash reserves, but a lot of it has to do with how you going to go about spending it, and how you prioritize that spending, and hopefully we'll have an opportunity at that point to determine what the best use for that funding is.
All right. Mr. Kern, you resigned as fire chief immediately following the administration's decision to end providing of ambulance services through the Kokomo Fire Department. If elected mayor, will you consider returning ambulance service to the fire department, and if so, how will you fund it?
Well, first of all, that's I think we all knew that question was coming, and it's one of those things that where we'd have to determine an absolute need for it. We'd have to determine. We don't know the future of Howard Regional right now. They're trying to combine with IU, and that kind of went through the cracks. And hopefully that ends up working out well for them, and we might be able to assist in the long run. But there are no immediate plans to do so. We have to, because that in itself would require hiring an additional group of firefighters that if the money is not there, you can't justifiably do it. So the fact of the matter is, it goes back to the old adage when you're in politics, when you remove something, it is very difficult to bring it back, regardless of what it is you remove.
So you don't anticipate bringing it back then, leaving it status quo?
Right now, I mean, right off the bat, it's going to be status quo, but I know there are some issues. There are some vital issues going on within dispatch, within emergency service, within response times of the current ambulance service that those kind of evaluations need to be looked at and taken into account as well.
Thank you. Mayor Goodnight, are you going to keep it the way it is?
Yeah. I think the saying is once somebody is given something, it's harder to take it away, not the opposite. But anyways, the ambulance service cost the city about $1.2 million to run, and it brought in revenues of about $300,000, give or take, maybe a little more than that. By not implementing no, to answer the question, no, I'm not going to. It's working right now. We'd all love to have a police officer on every corner. We'd all love to have an ambulance in every block and a fire station in every neighborhood. That's not any community 2011, 2012. The point is, if there's not a plan to reinstitute the ambulance service, I take that as a confirmation that the right decision was made during difficult financial times. That we were faced with services, which ones could be picked up by the private sector. Those would be daycare, the ambulance service, and the merging of dispatch. And so I think his answer confirms my decision.
Thank you. Scott, do you have any more on that issue?
Yeah, as far as the service, I'm not going to say that that came across as somewhat complimentary to the fact we got rid of something and the necessity to bring it back. I think there is a necessity to bring it back, but it falls on the taxpayer now. It falls on the obligation. You're obligated to a lot bigger audience out there, and once you've decided to take something away from them, just because you don't utilize it, you haven't had a necessity to utilize this ambulance service. You don't understand what you've had until you lose it, and it is something that we feel like that it is questionable that the current ambulance service that provides the same ambulance service for the Kokomo Fire Department does not fill the same void that ambulance service within the Kokomo Fire Department fills. But the fact of the matter is, if you don't have the money, you don't have the money. But in regards to dispatch, I think we're now seeing a little bit of problem that when you go into something and you put people in positions to look at dispatch, to make a determination as to whether or not those decisions were made rightfully, then you make a mistake, and that's where we're in today. That's why we're budgeting more money for dispatch, because the right people weren't allowed to voice their opinion at the time.
Do you have any more, Greg?
I'm not sure what he's talking about on dispatch. I don't run the dispatch. That is ran by the county sheriff, and the county is in charge of running the dispatch. And they chose which dispatchers they would keep and which ones they would that they chose not to be county employees.
Speaking of dispatch, the Citizens Consolidation Committee successfully submitted a proposal to combine emergency dispatch services between city and county. The county has approved a budget for 2012 that is approximately $100,000 higher than the $1.4 million approved for 2011. Now that the city has no direct control of emergency dispatch, how will you respond if the county asks you for additional funding for this service? Mayor Goodnight.
Thank you. Well, we've responded, and I've talked to both my Republican and Democrat city council members, and I have not got a dissenting opinion from any of them. The dispatch can be run for that $1.4 million. The question becomes the billing and what city taxpayers should be held accountable under that agreement. We've received multiple billings from the county government, and now that we've gotten the correct billing, I think it's going to come in at the $1.4 million budget. There are some things that they included in the original billing that were not the responsibility of the dispatch center. Some of it were the air cards for county sheriffs and some other minor details. But I think we're going to fall within, once the accounting principles are put in place, we're going to come in at that $1.4 million budget.
Scott, how will you deal with the $100,000 that they're going to ask the city to pony up part of?
Well, the unfortunate part is when the county had an opportunity to get with the city in regards to the time frame to let them know, that way they actually budget for that overflow if indeed that it ends up being over budgeted. But as far as I'm concerned, this is something that could be worked out. At the end of the day, they can work it out, and the county could pick up the tab at one point in time, and then if the city wants to make it right at a later date, they can. They got to do everything to foster that relationship to keep it going. But whether or not that's $1.4 million, that's left to be seen. Publicly, it's been put in the paper that the $1.4 million is not going to take care of it, but we'll just have to cross that bridge when we get there.
At the city council debate, candidates allege that the thing is mismanaged, and that's the reason, in part, large part, that they need additional monies. Do you agree with that? And that's the thing about it. If you go back to the onset of dispatch, you go back to the very beginning of it, when it was portrayed that it could be done for 1.4. If you remember, everybody that had anything to do with dispatch didn't agree with that. They didn't agree with that. They thought it would. They knew the consolidation was inevitable. It was going to happen. We all knew it was going to happen, and it was a good thing. It still is a good thing. But the fact of the matter is, they knew that it needed about, I think it was quoted at one point in time, $200,000 to $300,000 additional dollars. Now, whether or not that's the appropriate amount, I would have rather seen them do that and fall under that budget as opposed to doing the 1.4 and not be able to maintain and not be able to provide the service that they do. You would have suggested a $1.6, $1.7 million budget?
That's their, I mean, that is the people that were in charge of dispatch, that's what they wanted to do. That's what their recommendation was, and it kind of fell on deaf ears that they knew it. Nick Capozzola, he's the one that actually came out and said it's going to take a couple 100,000 more. And he knew it for a fact that he's ran that thing for years, and he said that over and over.
Well, he also said we needed 2.1 for a long, long time too, and obviously we didn't need that.
Absolutely, but and I agree with the fact that when it came down to making this thing happen, then the CCC got involved and everything else, that we knew that those numbers were going to be vital to making it work.
It's not unusual for department heads to want to ask for a lot of money.
Oh, absolutely, I understand that.
Mayor Goodnight, you have a response?
Just very quickly. That $1.4 million budgeted amount, they're going to come in, if not within that $1.4 million, they're going to come in very close to that $1.4 million, much closer to the 1.4 than they would a 1.6 or 1.7 that some people were advocating. So I think that is a reflection that the numbers that were presented to them, if not exactly right, were obviously very close into proximity with the 1.4.
Mr. Kern, Howard County recently made the decision to give a property tax credit next year to qualifying residents, essentially returning the money paid to cover lost revenue from GMCH, which was later recovered. The Howard County assessor has done so. Center Township Trustee Office also is considering doing the same. What is your plan for the unanticipated revenue the city received?
Well, to the best of my knowledge, obviously quite a bit of it's been utilized to pay the fire station off, and don't know what that balance remaining of that $2.4 million that they received.
I'm sorry, I should have phrased the question wrongly. If you had the opportunity before this, what would you have done? What would have been your decision with unanticipated revenue?
Correct, and you got to go back and look at it from the standpoint of what the taxpayers expect. It was conveyed to the taxpayers, you need to help us get through this thing. We're relying on the taxpayers to help us get through this thing right now because we're going to come in, severely underfunded, and in order to do this, once this thing pans out and we work everything out and GMCH goes ahead and settles, then we can possibly return this money to you in whatever fashion necessary. Now, those are the questions that people have. They wonder how it's determined that the city administration / mayor, he makes that decision for them. And, he asked people to step up and foot the bill for a while until GMCH came out and settled up with the city and the county. Now, me personally, I think if you make a pledge to them that you think these people should have taken the tax money and increased their taxes to fund this thing, at the end of the day, you should have given it back.
Mayor Goodnight, are you happy with the decision you made?
Yes. When you talk about $2.4 million, keep in mind only $1.2 million of that has came in. The other will hopefully come in at the end of the year or the first part of January. So when they say $2.4 million, that's not money that we have actually received at this point. That money, that 1.2, that half of that 2.4 was spent, I think, appropriately. It was Councilman Bob Cameron made a recommendation, and it was supported in full by all the Republicans and all the Democrats on the city council to use that money for sidewalk enhancement, working cooperatively with the Kokomo Center School Corporation so that they could protect the kids that have now increased their walking distances to schools. One thing I got to say that this is another frustration, and I touched on it just slightly earlier, is that Scott had the opportunity. I didn't make that decision in and of by myself. That was in cooperation with the city council. There was not one, Scott didn't come to a meeting. He didn't advocate for giving that money back. He didn't lobby the city council. And he didn't even come to a meeting and speak out and suggest that we give that money back. That money to me is taxpayer dollars, but it's no different than any other pool of taxpayer dollars, as he referenced earlier. Why we would give that money back and not any other portion of money back, I don't see the difference.
Any more, Scott?
No.
Mayor Goodnight. Drugs in Kokomo. Drugs has been a problem throughout the country for a long time now. Are you satisfied with our drug enforcement by your police department?
Yes. In the short note, drugs are a problem throughout this country, throughout this state. Every community is facing these challenges. It is a problem, and I think statistically, I'll get this number wrong, but somewhere about 80% of all crimes involve some sort of connection to drug activity. But the answer to the question was, do I think our police department's doing a good job? And I'd say yes. When you look at the major crime statistics, and all of them are related to, 80% or so are related to drugs. The major crime rates are down. So do we have it? Is Kokomo 100% drug-free? No, absolutely not. No community is. But I do think our police department's doing a very good job trying to do their best with this situation.
Scott.
Well, I'd have to respectfully disagree with the fact that our drug problem has done nothing but increase under this administration. We had the state police walked away from it. The Howard County Sheriff's Department walked away from a drug task force because of what they felt like were ethical reasons. And this happened under Mayor Goodnight's watch. And this is some of the integrity issues that we refer to over and over. Unfortunately, we've had some good community leaders here in town that's faced some tragedy. We had a young girl killed in this community, and it's all based on gangland drug killings. And those kind of things take place. It happens at night when a lot of people don't know what's going on. It happens in the middle of the night when most people are sleeping, and they don't see some of this activity. And this activity is rampant in Kokomo still. And that kind of goes back to as far as putting more police on the street. You're going to be able to protect the citizens of Kokomo a lot better if you just reroute the people that you have, restructure those people, and put more people on the street to make them safer.
Is there anything else specific you would do with our drug problem other than, I guess, take people out of the
I think as far
city
as
building and put them on the street?
Absolutely. There's an area that I feel is an area of concern right now, and most people don't deal with it, but there's a large part of the community that has to deal with it on a day in and day out basis, and we'll have to look at that and hopefully get a buy-in from not only the state police but the sheriff's department as well to get back in a group task force instead of just trying to fly by the seat of your pants here.
Mayor?
Sure. A few things Scott touched on. One of the things he mentioned, some sort of alleged corruption, and actually that was originated by his campaign chairman under the previous administration. I just inherited those allegations and accusations that never came to fruition once again. I don't see any numbers, and if Scott has them, I'd like to see them, where he says that the drug problem has gotten worse. Where's the data? Where's the facts? Based on what assumptions does he make this? And a lot of the reasons that he talked about on some of the problems within the sheriff's department have been corrected, and it was politicized not by me, but by some. There were some problems within some of the individuals in the sheriff's department with the Kokomo Police Department. One thing he touched on last debate, I have to throw in here, that I did some checking after the last debate. We went from 14 administrators in the Kokomo Police Department since I've taken office down to 9, and we went from 9 captains down to 5. So we have reduced the administration and been able to shift those resources correctly.
Was that what you was referring to, that I think Scott said that the state and the county walked away from our drug task force program? No, Mayor Goodnight. Did that happen, and has that been rectified?
It is. I think, as far as I know, everything. I don't think they ever completely walked away. There were a little bit of turmoil under the previous sheriff. But right now, I've talked with Sheriff Rogers many times. He's never once suggested to me that there's any type of problem with the cooperation between the sheriff's department and the Kokomo Police Department. So if there is something that Scott knows about that the sheriff hasn't shared with me, I talk with him every now and then, and hopefully he'll share that with me as well.
Any more, Scott?
No, just the fact that they both walked away. The state police and the sheriff's department walked away from a drug task force because of ethical reasons. I mean, that was the reasons they gave.
Didn't specifically say what the ethical reasons were?
Did they tell that to you? I mean, I guess that's.
I don't know.
I mean,
where did you find that out, Scott? I guess is the question.
Well, I was told from people from the state police and people from the sheriff's department. So,
who?
I'm not going to disclose their names.
Well, Mr. Wilson, it goes back to I heard it from somebody who heard it from somebody who heard it from somebody. So.
Done?
Sure.
All right. Getting near the end here. Annexation. Land west of the city will be completed in February, as we all know, or barring any additional legal action on a recertification or remonstrance. The same will happen to the land east of the city. If elected, Scott, what your plan to provide services to new residents, and how will you fund these services?
That's a good question. I think I read in the paper here recently that the city was trying to conduct a meeting on how they were going to do this, on how we were going to fund these things, and as far as annexation is concerned. And I think that's the question to a lot of the people in annexed areas are, I think those questions probably should have been asked prior to the forceful annexation. And that's another reason for big government. You know, we talk about larger government, we talk about trying to enhance the larger government, and that's what this is all about. That's part of forced annexation, is you try to make government bigger. And for whatever reason, they've chosen to take off the big chunk that they chose to do. But as far as paying for this without having the knowledge of those numbers in front of me and the actual services that you're going to be required to provide, you know, those services are not set in stone yet as in regards to when the police, when the fire, when trash pickup they're going to all be designated and sometime during the year of 2012. You have 3 years for the remaining capital expenditures. Now, whether or not they agree to terms with the annex group in regards to grandfathering people in to not charge them for their sewer taps and everything else, that's kind of up in the air. But as far as I'm concerned, we'd have to, he's going to get on me again, but we'd have to evaluate that. We'd have to look at the amount of people that we bring in and try to assess the amount of services and the amount of quality individuals, amount of employees we have to adequately provide those services to those people.
Thanks, Scott. Mayor Goodnight.
Yeah. Just for reference, the entire area, if you include the east side and the west side annexation proposals, over 70% of the peoples and the parcels that were being annexed were already either, over 70% were on city sewers and over 70% were receiving city fire protection. So it's not a huge expansion of those two services. A lot of the areas in the annexed areas were provided with police patrol, even if they were not provided with police service, in effect, because the police patrols had to go through certain areas of Terrace Meadows and Terrace Gardens to get to places like Cricket Hills and other areas of the city. The whole idea, it's the economy of scales. It's not a really hard concept. Is to expand the base of the city so that the people that are utilizing the services are helping pay for that. And eventually, it's a foolproof way to bring down tax rates and actually save taxpayers money by spreading the burden amongst more people. And that's, in essence, what the whole idea of annexation is.
Would you push annexation, Scott, if you were mayor?
Not to the level that it was pushed. I mean, as far as making things a little easier and making things more efficient for the entire community, I think at one point in time years ago, everybody was talking about how we need to block off the city of Kokomo in regards to square it off and make it more efficient for not only police, fire, but trash pickup and snow plow and everything else. So I doubt very seriously if that's an area that would have been even pursued. There are certain areas, pockets in Terrace Meadows, Lincoln Road, and areas like that those are ones that they're islands out there. They sit out on islands, and they're the ones that only make sense that those people eventually should be annexed. But to do it in a forceful fashion, I thought was a little irresponsible.
Mayor Goodnight.
The only thing I'll say is the approach we took was no different than any other city in throughout the state, whether it be Fort Wayne, Lafayette, Carmel, Fishers, whoever. We followed the law. We followed the guidelines set forth by the Indiana legislature and the state statute, and obviously it was all upheld through a court of law.
Two more questions. We'll move to closing statements. Mayor Goodnight. Harrisburg, Pennsylvania just filed bankruptcy, the most recent of many cities and towns to do that. Delaware County is going to close their offices on Friday, only work a 4-day week. Mount Vernon recently suggested they're going to end bus service for students. Can this happen here? What steps are you taking to keep that from happening here? And then, Mr. Kern, what steps would you take to keep that from happening here?
First of all, I think it's important to know why that is important. And the reason is that no individual, no business, no one's going to invest in a city that is going bankrupt. You're not going to be able to attract new businesses. No one's going to want to come in and help bail out a city that can't control its own finances. And fortunately, because of the people I mentioned earlier, department heads, city employees, and very tentative city council, we are not in that situation. One of your questions was, could we be in that situation? I think we're much further from that situation now than we were a few years ago. We are actually each year spending less money, building our cash reserves. I still think there's a little more to be put aside. We may be there by the end of this year or the first part of next year. But we're obviously in a better situation than most cities, and those cities that experience that will not be able to attract the jobs and investment that all communities are looking for.
Scott.
Could you repeat that, please?
Yes. Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, was the most recent city to file for bankruptcy protection. This happened in cities and towns throughout the country. Delaware County, just real close to us, has found it necessary to close their offices on Fridays, work 4-day weeks. Mount Vernon schools say they may have to end bus service, black and white. Can this happen in Kokomo, and what steps would you take to prevent it from happening?
Well, you know, I think we were only steps away from it potentially happening anyway if it weren't for the Chrysler bailout and the federal stimulus money pumping money into the city of Kokomo. We are fortunate that all those things happened for us, and if it weren't for the federal money that came our way to salvage all this, I'm not sure what kind of position we would be in today. I would say that we'd be in a similar situation that they are right now. I'm not sure that they've got the assistance. If you look on recovery.gov, you can kind of determine how much assistance the city of Kokomo has received. So, you know, I think we would just do everything possible to make sure that we are not in that position. We do everything possible to make sure that we are not a city in debt and a city that's not going to be attractive because we are in debt. And we are potentially looking at filing bankruptcy. So as far as I'm concerned, we do everything possible to make sure that wouldn't happen.
Mayor Goodnight.
Yeah, just one. When Scott talks about federal monies coming in, other than the SAFER grant, which went to bring back firefighters, and the I think it was called the COPS grant that allowed us to hire I think 4 police officers. Those monies were not used for anything in any way to subsidize the general fund and the general operating expenses. As Scott likes to call them, it was used for other things, for improvements on Dixon Road, for the neighborhood stabilization program, and a lot of it for the grants that brought the employees back. So I don't know if he's aware of this or not, but the federal stimulus dollars were not used to subsidize our general accounting inside city government.
Any more, Scott?
Yeah, I'm aware that they're not utilized for that as well.
Okay. Final question, then we'll go to closing statements. Scott, I think it would be a fair analysis to say that a large portion of your campaign is based on your dislike, your distrust, whatever the right word you want to use, of Mayor Goodnight. But you have been short on specifics. If elected, what do you know specifically right now you're going to do to bring jobs to Kokomo, to make Kokomo a better place to live, make Kokomo a better place to raise her family? What specifically will be on your short list of things to do?
Well, it's going to be a spirit of cooperation. I mean, we don't have that right now, and I know that just dealing with the amount of people that we've dealt with throughout the community, they understand that it's not a spirit of cooperation. It's more of a dictatorship. It's more of it's my way or the highway kind of thing. And there's a lot of people that take offense to that these days. It used to work. It doesn't work much anymore. And, you know, you have to cooperate in order to make things better for everybody. You have to cooperate in order to entice somebody to want to come to Kokomo. There's a reason why certain people aren't coming to Kokomo. There's a reason why 65% of the annexed people decided to sign a waiver or sign a petition saying they didn't want to come to Kokomo. So, you know, if you don't create that spirit of cooperation, you're going to be just in serious trouble down the road by continuing this kind of behavior with everybody you deal with.
So, if I understand you right, your first priority will be...
It's going to change the spirit of cooperation within everybody within the city of Kokomo, and that's the way it's going to have to work.
And you have a plan for that?
Yeah,
and how is that plan going to resonate into new jobs, better community?
It's going to change the environment of everybody who works for the city. Everybody who works for the city, they're going to present themselves in a better fashion to where it's going to be more enticing for people to want to come to the city of Kokomo.
If that's the case, I'm not saying it's not, I'm just saying if that is the case, the recent award, State Chamber of Commerce gave Kokomo. State Chamber of Commerce, very pro-Republican Party, very anti-Democrat. How do you think that award came about?
Well, I think it's those kind of awards, and not to underscore the award at all, but those kind of awards are attaboys. They're attaboys around the state. Everybody gets one. If you look, all you got to do is go down the list and look at. I think Muncie might have. If I have to go back and look at the list, but I think Muncie might have received that award twice in the last 20 some odd years. Everybody else receives one. Is it inconceivable to think that there's a reason why Kokomo hasn't, received it 2 or 3 times in a row, or any other city hadn't received it 2 or 3 times in a row? It's basically, and it is a good thing. It is a good thing for the state to award those kind of things, to reward the efforts that people do in regards to making their city look better. It was more of a, we appreciate the fact that your city does look better. And if you go downtown city of Kokomo, it does look better. I will not deny that whatsoever. But the fact of the matter is, I don't think they came in and rewarded city of Kokomo for the number of jobs it's created or the number of economic opportunities we have. That wasn't part of it. I don't see that. I don't see those jobs. And to quote the mayor here, I'd like to see those numbers. I'd like to see the net jobs that we've gained under his watch. So I think we're missing those.
Okay, last chance. Any specific program you're going to introduce that you're going to introduce right now?
Well, just basically, we talked about it before, and I think whether I spoke incorrectly or what, but it's basically it's a COIN acronym. It's a community-owned investment industry, or community-owned investment. I'm doing it again, but it's basically a group like the Green Bay Packers or anything else that you see here. It's almost like Community First Bank here in the city of Kokomo. It's owned by the community, and the city government can assist in finding ways for these community-owned industries to come in here, but that's going to take cooperation on the city's part to help them, to assist them, not financially, but they're going to assist them in getting them in here. And that's what we're looking to try to do.
Thank you, Scott. Mayor Goodnight, what specifically are you going to do if elected to a second term?
Okay. Well, first of all, that idea is not new. If it's just assist any small business that's interested in coming to the city, we do that. The Economic Development Alliance does that. Every city does it to their full and capabilities. A few things, though. I mean, again, there was a lot of time in there, and so I want to, if I can have a few minutes. He used the word dictatorship. That's a theme with Scott. It's the former mayor. Go back 2 mayors. He said this about Dick Knight, who was the director of operations under Mayor Troball. He said it about his former chief. Uses it. It's everyone that oversees Scott is a dictatorship. And I've read those quotes at the last debate. He talks about not getting along. I get along with other mayors. I'm very good friends with Mayor Wayne Siebold, Republican, in Marion. I have a great relationship. I spoke this week with Mayor Tony Wrzworski of Lafayette. Whether Republicans or Democrats, we do have good relationships. The governors actually went on 2 trade missions that he supported, sending one, Chad Pittman, to Italy in the IEDC and to their affiliate office over in Europe, and then on the delegation to China. We have good relationships, not just me, but the city administration, and we've got a great city council that works cooperatively. Go look at our votes. We may have our differences, but for the most part, they're 8-1 or 9-0 votes. So there's not this huge discontent that he alleges. And to go back to the award that was brought up, to discredit that award, and I'm not, maybe that's too harsh of a word, but to not take it for its, to take it for what it's worth. There are 165 cities and towns throughout the state of Indiana. And Kokomo has never received that. And the reason they did, he says, well, did we get it because our downtown looks pretty or whatever? He said, no, it was because of a few things. The way we leveraged our economic development income funds and to make sure that was matched with private investment for small businesses. It talked about our largest investment that I mentioned earlier, the $1.4 billion, which led the entire state, more than Indianapolis, more than Fort Wayne, more than any city in the state of Indiana. So to ask what will I do if elected to second term for jobs, it's easy. We are going in the right direction. We need to make our city as attractive as we can for individuals, for businesses, large and small, by having a low-cost, attractive place. And we not only do we want those people as employees, we want them as residents. And I think we're doing that with our Economic Development Alliance. We have the best people in this community at that table. We have the chancellors from the major universities. We have the president and CEOs of both of our hospitals. And we have our largest employers and small employees represented at that table.
Thank you. Closing statements.
Yep.
Mayor Goodnight, 2 minutes.
2 minutes. Just first of all, I want to thank not only the people that facilitated this, the audience as well, and I do want to publicly thank my opponent for coming here tonight and participating. I've ran for office before. I know this is his first time, and it is challenging. So I do, if you've never done this, it's something that unless you experience it personally, it's hard to really describe it. So I do appreciate his participation. With that, we feel like we are doing the right things here in Kokomo. We feel like we're getting recognized throughout the state and Midwest. These awards, they do mean something. It's recognition, no different than if it's having the best ribs or the cleanest restaurant or having the known for any other service that you provide. Our parks are receiving awards. We're getting the accolades from different groups, whether it be Forbes and Best Places to Live Cheaply. These things are things that we should desire and we should covet. And we're going in the right direction. I feel like we are at we have an opportunity with our strong financial situation, the things I talked about, the bond rating, paying off all of our debts. And I think we have an opportunity for future growth if we continue to make those right decisions. And I thank all of you again and would really appreciate your support and vote on November 8th. Thank you.
Scott Kern, close 2 minutes.
Thanks again, everyone, for coming tonight. I'd like to thank both Tribune and Perspective for hosting this event, as well as IUK. And also, I'd like to thank the public for looking through this, and hopefully they'll investigate this. They investigate the numbers, investigate everything that was set up here tonight. And I think you'll agree that there's some of the things that you're accustomed to seeing aren't necessarily accurate. You go back to the younger days when you watched the movie Wizard of Oz, and then you finally get the opportunity to see Toto pulled back the curtain. You see you actually get the opportunity to see the smoke and fire, and that's what a lot of what we see right now. We see a lot of the smoke and fire. We see a little bit, and I know last debate I was portrayed as somebody who looks at the glass half empty. No, I don't. I plan on living here for a long time. I plan on hoping that my daughter will come back. She's off to college right now, and I'm hoping she has an opportunity to come back to Kokomo. But right now, we're pulling some of the same things over and over. Right? We're doing some of the same things, and we're not gaining traction in regards to jobs and economic opportunities. And I feel that if we just continue down this same path, we're going to be discussing this for years to come. And hopefully we'll have an opportunity come November 8th this year to change that. And we'll change the whole outlook and the whole environment on how people perceive Kokomo and have an optimistic viewpoint. Trust me, we've been out there for almost a year now. And we're not convincing people that this is a positive environment. And we need to change that. And for whatever reason, they feel they all have different reasons, and we're not going to talk about every one of them, but we're going to talk about a lot of them, and hopefully people will see that. And once again, I appreciate the opportunity, and I would appreciate your support come November 8th. Thank you very much.
I'd like to thank everyone for attending. We'd also like to thank the candidates for their participation. Remember to vote on November 8th. Good night.